As always, we begin by greeting as we Muslims greet. Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Praise be to Allah. I believe we are in for another dynamic episode of Bilalian Voices in the tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Tonight, we have as guests Imam Ibrahim El-Amin, who serves in the capacity of Special Assistant and Representative of Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed in the Office of the Ministry, the Muslim American Ministry for Human Salvation. And we also have joining us Imam Frank Shaheed out of Baltimore, Maryland, who once served in the capacity of Assistant Imam while Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed simultaneously was in the role of the Imam there in Baltimore and also serving in the capacity of Imam W.D. Muhammad's Special Assistant and Representative. Greeting, my brothers. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam.
We also have joining my co-host, Imam Hanif Abdul Wahid out of Rochester, New York. My name is Terenzo El-Amin, Imam and business owner here in Cincinnati, Ohio, of El-Amin Priority Distributors.com. Before we get into our discussion with these two Imams, we like to give a few announcements before we get into our program. Muslim American leader Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed has been invited by the citizens of Dallas, Texas, to address the public by giving a major public address there on Sunday, June 2nd. Standing in the last days, Islam, humanity, and intelligent morality. Also, our Imam will be returning to Rochester, New York for the fourth time for the fourth annual Independence Day weekend public address there in Rochester, New York on July 6th, Saturday, July 6th. The topic, the sacred aim of neighborhood excellence, restoring the lost property of the American people. For more information, you can go to MuslimAmericanMinistry.com. We are returning from a successful event there in Detroit, Michigan, in which Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed gave a public address entitled Cities of America Come Alive, Islam and the Salvation Road. My first question is to Imam Ibrahim El-Amin. Can you speak to the importance of Detroit, Michigan, and what it represents in our tradition? And why is Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed placing emphasis on this city, the city of Detroit, Michigan?
Praise be to Allah. Thank you for inviting me to this program. And for the work that you all have done with all of the programs that you had and all of the wonderful guests. The content is not only of a very, very high quality, but in terms of feeding the spirit of our people, I think this platform is very necessary. The importance that Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed has placed on the city of Detroit is not the importance that he placed on it, but the importance that Imam W.D. Muhammad placed on it. Obviously, our history as a Muslim community begins there and is associated with, I shouldn't say associated, but comes out of the initiation of Mr. Farad's plan there in Detroit in the early 1930s. It was there that he met the then Elijah Poole, who later became known as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, whose life work was the construction of the Nation of Islam. And the history of that is documented, perhaps not as well as it should be, but that's why we're here. And in the future, it will definitely be documented in a more thorough fashion. I wouldn't want to comment too much on the importance of the city of Detroit, given that the Imams in Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad's address this past Sunday, the commentary he gave in terms of the importance of Detroit, what it represents to the society of America as a social body, to our life as a social body. He gave very insightful commentary with regard to its importance and the importance of it in terms of where we have come from and where we're going. He pointed to Detroit obviously is associated with America's industrial might, its industrial ingenuity, Mr. Henry Ford in particular, with the mass production of the automobile, as well as other industries that were associated with that particular industry. And we know from the commentary of Imam W. DEEN Mohammed that is being continued in this present moment by Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad, that we see Adam as the beginning of industry, or an industrial man. So the parallels of those elements that I'm presenting to you that come from Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad's address this past Sunday, I think are quite clear, and the implications of his comments and his teaching on this matter, which is Imam W. DEEN Muhammad's teaching on this matter, make it clear for us the importance of a city like Detroit, not just the city itself, but the Midwestern region. I don't want to go too far into this situation, if you will, but we're well aware of the idea or the argument that's been put forward that our community is, its leadership should be locally oriented, that is the principal concern for, or the principal way in which our leadership is to be understood and expressed locally. That's absolutely not true. The importance of Detroit has national importance. It has regional importance. It has local importance too. We're not saying that the local situation is something that need be ignored, but obviously what Detroit speaks to in terms of our life as a people is something that extends far, far beyond just the locales of the city of Detroit and the confines of a masjid or Islamic center in the city. So I would encourage anyone that has not heard the Imam's address to look at it and study it, and more importantly, have the courage to acknowledge the truth of what it is that you're hearing and what it is that you're seeing. Be a witness to that which is correct and that which you know in your soul to be clear evidence of the continuity of Imam W.D. Muhammad's leadership in this modern time.
With that, what we would like to do is play a clip from the Sunday public address, Cities of America, Come Alive, Islam and the Salvation Road. So we have the first clip.
But I represent a movement in our life as a Muslim community. Me, myself, personally. I'm speaking of myself personally, and I'm also speaking of myself in the context of the life of our community. I am the representative of Imam W.D. Muhammad, who was the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And you all in this audience, you know this, and I'm sure that most of the people who are listening to us on our broadcast, they know this as well. And maybe they will associate me with that history. That, oh yes, that's true of him. He was once that. He was once Imam W.D. Muhammad's representative, but he's not that now. Not true. Not true. No matter what they say. I was that then, and I'm that now. And I represent a movement in the spirit of the African-American Muslim community to be restored again to his vision. I represent that. I represent that in the spirit of the people. And in that spirit, which is an honest spirit, and it's not defective, it is whole. It has requisitioned my presence and my leadership. It has called to me with soul power to come forward. So if someone is looking for some kind of formal activity or election or something, and say, well, who authorized you? Your original nature authorized me, as it was expressed and taught to you by Imam W.D. Muhammad. Something that was existing as a connection in your spirit to his voice and his appeal has now requisitioned me. That's what authorizes me. So don't be looking around for an endorsement from the Imams. You won't get it. Don't be looking around for an endorsement from the spiritual order that they belong to. You're not going to get it, because their spiritual order and their leadership was not ever predicated upon that which he was inviting them to.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
And Imam Frank and Imam Ibrahim, both of you can address this here, but as we're hearing that clip there, what comes to mind to me is that this requisition that the Imam is talking about, or that has come up, it comes out of a spirit. We heard him say this in Detroit, that when leadership is weakened, what emerges out of it is a spiritual energy that reinforces that people come alive after confusion. And it seems to me that this is the leadership that he represents, and that has been a requisite of most of us who loved and supported Imam W.D. Muhammad. Now we hear this very, very clearly through his student. So I guess my question for this is that although there's a weakened leadership in this world and in this country today, how refreshing for you two, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on this here, is Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad's message.
Should I go first or ma'am? Right.
Not rock, paper, scissors, just whoever wants to.
Well, the it isn't a I first met Imam AbdulMalik Muhammad in 2003. The community here and where I live in Southern California had invited him to an annual program that they would have every year about the springtime. And I can't say that I was familiar with him outside of just kind of a very kind of general awareness that he was the representative of Imam W.D. Muhammad, and that there was a family relationship. He was his son-in-law at the time. I hadn't heard anything at that point, anything from Imam W.D. Muhammad speaking about his role or the work that he had done. But I understood that in terms of the Imam's meeting with the Pope John Paul II at the time, and some other events that Imam AbdulMalik had played a very integral role. So I was aware of his position and aware that the work that he was doing was of a unique quality and of a particularly high quality in terms of the leaders that were in the public awareness of our community at that time. And I'll just put it this way, quite simply. Before the visit was over, his visit was about a couple of days. I knew for sure that this was the next leader of the community. I was about 18 years old at the time. And I didn't have, any great deal of experience or, in this case, knowledge of all of the circumstances of the relationship between him and Imam W.D. Muhammad, and of Imam W.D. Muhammad and the leaders at that time. I guess you could say some of the more popular leaders of that time. They're still popular now, although I have a sense that their popularity is waning. So I didn't have the resources of knowledge and experience, but I was conditioned by my family, my parents, my mother in particular, to be sensitive to Imam Muhammad's teaching and the things that he would emphasize in terms of what our Islamic identity should be, and what we were aspiring to from the beginning of our community to the present time in his leadership and even into the future. So that was the only what I had to rely on was only what had been deposited in my soul. So what we're seeing now for me isn't a surprise. There was an expectation, an expectation that first came from Imam W.D. Muhammad, because even though I had never heard specifically, I'm talking about actually being in an audience and hearing Imam W.D. Muhammad speak on the matter about leadership after him. I took it for granted. It just seemed logical, natural, that there would be a leader after him, that there would be some kind of a situation where upon his passing, that we would either know beforehand, or we would have a sense of it beforehand, or there would be some process by which we would come to know and recognize and support the leader after him. So hearing Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad now, it is, you're right, it is refreshing, it is inspiring. But if you believe in Allah and you accept his word and his promise to the believers, then you shouldn't be surprised.
Right.
You should rejoice. And it should be further confirmation or further I guess you might say pressure, if you will, but something to drive you to fix yourself to the purpose that we have as a Muslim people here in America. So refreshing, but not at all refreshing, inspiring, and something that serves to increase the determination, but not something that that I'm surprised by, or I think that we should be in any way shocked to see, especially now, given all of the historical record that has been unearthed and publicized and presented.
The evidence is there. Imam Frank, same question with the requisition for your soul for Imam AbdulMalik Muhammad.
Yes, sir. And once again, greetings to all, to the audience and to the panel. I would just say that just the term refresh suggests that you've had some familiarity with it before, in order for it to come back to you to understand that this is where the direction or emphasis or way should be. So I would say that, Imam AbdulMalik, as Imam Muhammad's representative, was Imam Muhammad at the time pointing us to what the future looked like. And if we stayed with this particular individual, with this particular language or commentary, then that will take us in a time, as he said, of noise and clamor, to be able to understand during a time of disordinance and confusion what the direction should be. So for me personally, having met Imam AbdulMalik in 1995, I would say that what he's doing currently is what he's always done. And as Imam Ibrahim said earlier, you have to witness truth. If you are witness to truth, then you understand that what you're seeing him do now is what he did in the capacity of Imam Muhammad's representative. Oftentimes when we look at succession, we look at next leaders, we often look at it in someone taking on the title of something, but we've never looked at it for them having the interest of the previous leader.
Right.
So he also comes to define that for us, specifically what succession looks like in leadership. So, and that was once again Imam Muhammad's way. That was his commentary, and that was him putting Imam AbdulMalik in a position to address us in a time in the future to help us understand it. But in the meantime, during the life of Imam W.D. Muhammad, he was giving us signs to say at some point, when you come to witnessing the truth and you come back to the moral life of the moral leadership that Imam Muhammad has established for us in the world as a leader to address the moral life. And that is a discipline that we have in order for us to see the religious life in a better way. You'll come to understand that repentance will have to come into your soul at some point to witness that this is what's truthful, and I must abide by this witnessing of the truth, which means now I have to fix my own disposition to be able to follow what Imam Muhammad has been guiding us to the whole time. So hearing Imam AbdulMalik in Detroit was, once again, he said it is refreshing. And for me, yes, I've heard it before. I've watched it before. I've watched it display itself and live before. So for me, it was very refreshing. And as Imam Ibrahim would say, but it was expected. We knew it then. Right. For those who were honest and sincere, then we understood that we were looking at future time and leadership for our community, and that we would be okay because that was Allah giving us a sign that in the future, in this time, we would have guidance and we would be given the opportunity to live our best life.
Well, the Imam, he made it very clear. And my next question is that the invitation for American cities to come alive, we're attempting now and trying to go across and do a tour of America. This is a timely message for American cities. And I think the one thing that I did get out of it, what the Imam was saying that would be the final conclusion, is for us to continue to pursue our moral destiny. And so crisscrossing and going to these American cities with this message right here, how important is it us as his followers and his supporters to support this ideal of bringing these American cities alive again and making good on the promise what Imam W.D. Muhammad asked us to do when he came into leadership, remake the world. I'll get that to you, Imam Ibrahim.
Islam is we've been taught that Islam is a universal concept, a universal idea. It supports universal truth. It is a source of universal truth, and also that it is the religion of the nature. So in calling the American cities to come alive, we're calling them to come back to their nature. And that doesn't require a whole lot of commentary if we look at the moral landscape, to say nothing of the political and economic landscapes, which are just an outgrowth of the moral landscape and the spiritual landscape of America. You can see the necessity for this call. And it is also a call to our community to come alive to its best self, its highest expression, to come away from the narrow, provincial, ritualistic life and routine that behavior that we have fallen into, and to once again reassert and reestablish ourselves as a vital factor for the establishment of a model society here in America that will obviously be an example to the world over. So the call begins obviously with us who are in support, and also too for all of you all who are watching and knowing what you're seeing is the truth, but you're too afraid because you don't want the people at the Juma crowd to give you funny looks or wonder about whether or not you've been converted or turned or whatever terminology you all use. Stop being a coward. Stand up. Stop watching and hitting the like button. Someone asked me, why did Imam AbdulMalik Mohammed has brothers standing on the stage with him? He's answered it, but I'll repeat his answer if you haven't heard it. But this is a time where we need to see men standing.
That's right.
Sitting down and listening to the Jummah khutbah is not going to get the job done. Sitting down and watching the live stream and quietly testifying to yourself that what you're hearing is the truth is not going to get the job done. That makes you a coward. And there's a punishment for cowardice, especially in times such as these. So the call is for us, begins with us initially because, you know, we have a social, the social ties, and then it extends to the outer community, but always with the interest of constructing the model society of which we have been prepared and conditioned to play a central role in the realization of that vision, of that society.
Imam Frank?
Yes. I would also add to that as well when we go back to this term requisition. So, you know, the African American Muslim who has come through this guided tradition, as we have come to know, we have been the requisition for the world to bring itself back to correct behavior and to correct disposition, for the guidance of Allah to come into the world, to establish ourselves and to establish the world as what Allah has deemed for us, for our own destiny. So, you know, we shouldn't placate ourselves and play ourselves cheap, understanding of the weight and the magnitude of what Allah has truly blessed us with. So when we go back to what Imam Muhammad has taught for his 33 years, he never brought us into any type of religious, fundamental type of display of ritualistic type of anything. He never did that. He always addressed the moral issue in mankind, the whole life, just as Muhammad the Prophet did. He addressed the whole life of the people. And in addressing these moral situations, brought the people back to straighten up every aspect of their life. And that's what Imam Muhammad has done for us. So once again, for those who sit back and just try to find the religious aspect of what Al-Islam has for them, and they should hide in those little pockets, you know, the call is for you to stand up. The call is for you to not be so cowardice, and you to not be a part of what it is that it should be. First of all, our first identification as Muslims is us witnessing. There is a witnessing. So you have to witness the truth. And as the Imam said in his address about the Adhan and what the importance of the Adhan is, and who was the one who called the Adhan, you know, all of that stuff is all significant in us, in these inner cities, in these cities, which most of us inhabit these cities. So the call is for us to wake up so the world can wake up. So as Imam Muhammad said, we make the world.
I want to add just something else right quickly, if I may. The witnessing, we witness as Muslims first that Allah is, as believers, we witness that Allah is one, and we witness that Muhammad the Prophet is his messenger and his servant. And as has been commented on by our leaders, both past and present, the witnessing of Muhammad the Prophet's leadership and his special role in the life of man is a witnessing of Allah's plan for human life and the development and growth of human life toward its destiny. It's the movement of human life toward its destiny. We recognize, we witness that Allah has a plan for that. So for those of you who are watching what has transpired this past Sunday in Detroit and are aware of the work that is being done, the obligation on you, your shahada is not complete, your shahadatain is not complete until you witness the unfolding of Allah's plan for man in this moment. It's not isolated to 1400, the birth of the prophet and the work from the time that he received revelation until his physical passing. You're not witnessing just that isolated moment in history, those 23 years. What you're witnessing is the whole arc of man's existence, from his origin to his destiny. And for those of us that come from the Muslim African-American tradition, if you're not witnessing the truth of what is happening now, then you're not a believer. You have not submitted. You may submit to the authority of Islam in your life, the impact that it has had on your life. You may submit even to the social authority that came, that was passed down from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to his son. You felt some pressure, so you submitted to that. You have not, faith has not entered your heart. If you're looking at what Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad and his supporters are doing, and you're not witnessing the truth of it without reservation, then you're not a believer.
That's right. Imam Terenzo.
Imam Frank and Imam Ibrahim, we all were present for this public address there in Detroit. And when I listened to this clip that we just played, where the Imam speaks regarding who authorized him, and he says, your original nature, and what Imam W.D. Muhammad poured into you that you accepted. When I was listening to that, I heard my story. I heard the situation that I went through here in Cincinnati, looking for Imam W.D. Muhammad's leadership in the public. He mentioned soul power. He was requisitioned by soul power. Can you speak to that, Imam Frank? Being requisitioned by soul power.
Yes, yes, sir. And just as a lighthearted moment here, you know, we think, when we think of soul power, I think of James Brown and that very famous conversation that James Brown had with Imam Muhammad about, you know, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, and what that did for him to create that song. In his soul, what that did for him, how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad impacted his soul so much that he was moved. His soul was moved to create such a song that really identified African American, and as the Imam said, the energy for us, this combustible type of energy that we see that the industrialized of what Detroit represents for all of America, that movement in man to be industrial, for him to create and for him to establish himself and establish life. So that whole soul power moment, yes, absolutely. So for me as well, being in a situation where you're growing into an Islamic identity, you're seeing your Islamic community now begin to grow and begin to develop. There's always indicators there that always keep you on the road, keep you in the same breath and the same emphasis as the leadership. And that is the purity of leadership. That is the moral leadership. There's always indicators there, and your soul can always identify what these markers look like. So just like you, Imam Terenzo, as he's speaking, you know, I'm saying the same thing about my beginnings, about my nativity coming into this community, understanding that even before it even came into my conscious mind, my soul was already directing me in a direction to be sensitive enough to hear him,
Right.
to hear this message, to hear Imam W.D. Muhammad in his lifetime, and to have it confirmed by Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad. Even at that time, to understand that this is what the soul is requisitioning. And not only that, it now comes with another part. And that second part is for us to establish the life. The life has to be established. It's not enough for us just to hear it and feel it. And as they say, hitting like buttons. There has to be another part to that. There's a second part to that. And the second part is to come alive, to come into our own collective purpose, and to move with a certain energy in us that our soul is requisitioning in us to move to a destination for us to have our best life. So when I heard the soul power and I heard him say that, that was the picture that came to my mind.
What we would like to do now, we have a second clip that we would like to play and discuss it on the other side.
The office of the President of the United States has deteriorated from a moral office, at least in its appeal to world populations and leadership, to sustain and to work for the order of universal global peace, to a cheap office seen as an objective of immoral, unprincipled, decadent influence. You have a man right now who's running for President of the United States, has no respect for justice, no respect for the offices of justice, no respect for the courts, no respect for the judges. Say, well, that's such a personal matter. No. You're seeking an office that builds its credibility upon the advance of a notion of universal justice based on respect for the inherent rights of man. And you go before the world as a one disrespecting that principle. And the American people are manipulated into playing the game along with you. Manipulated by the devilish media that presents this argument. And then on the other hand, you have one claiming to be associated with religious faith and looking at conditions in the world that are disrespecting human populations and refuse to acknowledge the obligation of the American people clearly to those that are being deprived of their rights and their life in Gaza. It has come a long distance, the office of the President of the United States, long distance away from the appeal to global order and peace. Mm. And I'm the one to point it out. I succeed the vision of the moral offices of Muslim leadership in the tradition of the first community of Muslims in America. I don't claim the authority of any local office. I don't claim the authority of Masjid Wali Muhammad in Detroit, Michigan, or its people, or any other masjid. My authorization comes from the association of responsibility and responsible leaders that came to address the condition of man in the tradition of Muhammad. That's what I represent. And it is the hope. It is the promise of reformation. It is the salvation of human society. The message of salvation to human society. From the voice of the descendants of slaves in the tradition of the Islamic focus that reignited their life. In the tradition of one that condemned America in its hypocrisy and invited them to a new identity and a new appreciation of their humanity. And in the name of the one who introduced for the first time the teaching of the Quran and Muhammad the Prophet, I say, as representative of that tradition and successor of DEEN Muhammad, cities of America, come alive.
Yes.
Now, I don't know about you, but my soul is rejoicing. And I'm sure that there are people in this audience that are hearing my voice today and will hear it, and their souls will rejoice. That now, on the scene, again, is representation of man's moral destiny. Thank you. May God favor our interests and preserve this work. And we pray that it is pleasing to him and acceptable to him. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah.
Wow.
When I heard that part there, just so much understanding and clarity. And as the Imam said, his spirit, he was rejoicing, I was rejoicing, and hearing that type of understanding. And I don't say this lightly, Imam Ibrahim. Who is speaking like that? I mean, it's clear. I mean, that just organically came from me because I'm listening. And I said, no one else that identified with Imam DEEN Muhammad or not is not speaking with that type of clarity. Could you speak to that, Imam Ibrahim?
Well, the reason why, well, there are a variety of reasons, but the principal one, excuse me, and this has to be understood, or will have to be studied by our people, our future historians and social chroniclers, those charged or those who have the interest in understanding these events. Imam DEEN Muhammad's resignation. Most of the implications of that have really slipped by most of our people in terms of their understanding of what Imam DEEN Muhammad was communicating, what he was separating from, and what it indicated for the future of his people. The reason why, or I should go back to this point, the principal reason why no one is speaking like this is exactly why he resigned. What he was calling the leaders to the ones that, we are most familiar with and who had the high profile and the popularity at the time and even now, they refused, they rejected it.
That's right.
They had a separate interest and a different idea of where it is that they wanted to go and where it is they wanted to direct his people to. So it's only natural, or I should say it should be expected that in a time of confusion, that those who separated themselves from the pathway out of the confusion wouldn't have anything to offer in this time of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed, despite whatever the critics might say, and even they'll admit this, is not associated with anything other than Imam W.D. Muhammad's leadership. He has never been associated with an Arabic tape production company, a how to pray seminar, a relationship seminar, man and woman relationship seminar, or any of the things that most of these leaders are associated with.
Right.
He is associated strictly with Imam W.D. Muhammad's teaching, Imam W.D. Muhammad's focus, Imam W.D. Muhammad's vision. So the continuity of that logically would come with him. And these others, I'm not privy to what their private conversations are. I don't want to be privy to it. But they don't have the authorization, and they don't have the interest really to continue in this tradition. So as a result, they're sealed. Their eyes are, their hearts and their minds are sealed, and they're walking back and forth in confusion. So this isn't anything that I think requires a whole lot of contemplation or reflection or explanation. It's obvious. It's obvious. And I believe the Imam may have spoken about this in one of his classes, but there's a popular photo of him and Imam W.D. Muhammad that we've distributed quite often in relationship to the promotion of certain events, but also just kind of generally speaking. And I'm not sure if many people are aware, but this photo was taken at the National Convention immediately following the public announcement, because there was a meeting that Imam W.D. Muhammad had with the resident imams where he announced his resignation. And then there was the public communication of it to the following, the great numbers that were gathered there during Imam W.D. Muhammad's public address. Yes, there it is. This was immediately following the Imam's address. And the Associated Press, the photographer, I won't mention his name, but the photographer for the Associated Press wanted to take a photo. And Imam W.D. Muhammad refused to take the photo until Imam AbdulMalik had been brought there, and the photo would be taken with the two of them together. So in the same space of him announcing to his following that he had disassociated himself and his leadership, from their interest and from the direction that they were wanting to move in that same space, he tells the Associated Press, one of the largest media organizations in the world, that he wanted to be pictured, that he would permit them to take a photo of him in that moment only with Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed there. And to get a little bit more abstract about the photo, if you can look at the photo, it's a bit of a profile from the side shot. And this is expounding upon your question, Imam Terenzo, who else is speaking like this?
Right.
When have you ever seen Imam W.D. Muhammad look at another leader with that level of comfort, with that level of ease and appreciation? I defy you, or I won't say I defy you, but I challenge you, those of you who are critical, produce something like it for your local wizard, for your Arabic tape production person, for your relationship guru.
It's a good point, Imam.
Right.
Imam
Yes.
Frank, regarding the clip that we just viewed, the Imam gave us great help in regards to the circumstances that the world is in, particularly America, with his leadership coming from the presidency of the United States. Could you speak to what the Imam was speaking towards? He spoke towards the corruption on one end and the neglect on the other end, coming from that office, and said how it has come a long way from that honorable position of moral stance, moral representation for the world.
Yes, sir. Well, and once again, I invite all who are listening who haven't heard that address to listen to that address and listen to it several times. He began the address by giving us a understanding of the term of Assalamu alaikum, what that means from the beginning of the address, and what constitutes peace, and how peace is established and how peace is maintained. He began that address with that, and then later into the address talks about the world peace and why the world peace is at risk because of a lack of morality in its leadership. So the leadership, as he mentioned, on one hand is talking about a neglect of something, how they just have no regard of the spaces, of the respect of the human soul, the human edifice, the human establishments, just no regard whatsoever. And that creates conflict. And conflict in itself is really just disorder. Just a disordered situation. And part of what the Imam also said was in a private conversation that he may have shared with a few people too, about a dream that he had, and about how about a pair of glasses, and how the Imam was speaking and asking him a question about glasses, finding his glasses, but the people that were behind him, you couldn't see their faces. Their faces weren't made clear. And we found out that that was the leadership, that the leadership was in a confused situation, that the people were now confounded. They couldn't follow good leadership because the leadership never had a face that they could readily identify as this is the direction of what we need to go. So that part of the conflict and that part of the confusion he's addressing. And then the other part of that is not having a regard either. So one, having an understanding of a situation that's being jeopardized, but not moving on it because of a lack of a regardfulness of the sanctity of the human soul and the human spirit. And he's calling that out, saying that in that position of a world leader who's responsible for the peace of the world, that you have neglected, this office has neglected what it was designed to be, one who upholds the peace. And you get that from good moral leadership. So there wasn't just an indictment on the political situation of America, it was also an indictment on the religious avenues of America, the social avenues, the political avenues, the business avenues, everything that feeds the life of man. That was an indictment on it because it didn't have a correct moral constitution. And as I said earlier, the moral constitution brings you to a position of repentance. And in that position, it now leads you to having a greater regardfulness, or as taqwa, as we would know it to be, a greater regardfulness of what Allah and Allah's plan is for man. And from that, you can reestablish the sanctity of such a high office. And that's why he said, who is more qualified to be the president of the United States but him?
Yes. Yes, based upon that. And I think one other thing that needs to be said here is that the more and more that we study Imam AbdulMalik, is that his training and the way that Imam W.D. Muhammad has trained him, he has never left off from that, has never studied up under any other type of school of thinking or any other foolishness. Reasoning and logic has been inculcated into his mind, his body, and his spirit from his leader. And he hasn't left that. But most of the folks who are the distractors that are in our community, they just don't have that. And they have left that. And we could see it very honestly, just based upon the rhetorical question that you keep asking. Who is speaking like this here? Well, you're not going to hear it from anyone else. And those folks have developed themselves in such an echo chamber in terms of what they have used to justify them being local, and they believe in charge as a boss over a building or a masjid. They cannot get to that. Out of all of this confusion, as the Imam stated in Detroit, there's an energy, a spiritual energy that comes out of that noise and clamor, and it's so distinct and it's so clear, and it refocuses the mind and the spirit after corruption has been upon the people. And this is why his character and his disposition is the best in terms of holding the office of President of the United States. I know folks would say in a heartbeat, well, I don't know about this guy, this Muslim leader, this or that. It's not so much that, it's about the disposition that needs to be in that office, because it has fell a long ways. And the Imam laid that out very clearly in Detroit.
Imam Ibrahim, I have a question as we prepare to conclude. This question here, language that I heard Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad use most recently there in Detroit in his public address. Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad speaks of the appeal of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Can you speak to the appeal of Imam W.D. Muhammad and why his voice and reason is needed again by way of his success?
The fulfillment of Allah's plan for human life, if I can put it simply. And I mentioned this earlier, that we bear witness to Allah's the oneness of Allah and his authority over creation, and we bear witness to his plan for that creation. And we can look at that in different ways. You can look at that in the context of the physical world, the physical life of human beings. the arc, if you will, of civilizations, the rise and fall of various civilizations throughout human history, of various human communities. We can see it perhaps even in our own individual lives and individual existence. And we are witnessing it right now as Americans in terms of the moral and the spiritual landscape of our social environment. So the promise of Allah to the slave, the American slave, who in his soul called out to his creator for a way out of not only the physical bondage, but we know, and we know this from the certain historical figures that we can look to, Frederick Douglass being one of them, a famous citizen of Rochester, where we'll be visiting soon, that there was a movement a movement to escape the moral and psychological oppression of the American environment, of the contradiction in the American environment. And those, the call of our people was answered by Allah with the initiation of Mr. Farah's plan, its execution by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the fulfillment of it in reasoning and in expression in Imam DEEN Muhammad. However, the work isn't complete. The task isn't complete. You can't look to any circumstance, local or regional, where we can point to a vibrant cultural life that our people have. They're pockets of it. They're individuals, outstanding individuals we can look at and take a great deal of pride in as graduates of a Claire Muhammad school in a particular area, who are in their professional pursuits achieving great things. But as a collective expression of our spiritual determination, we still are lacking an establishment. So it's necessary, even after we have the establishment, but it is always necessary to have continuity of the moral and spiritual orientation that established us. And that moral and spiritual orientation is not, as we've stated earlier, something that's restricted to religious rituals and religious practices. We have an obligation to ourselves. We have an obligation to this society. We have an obligation to the international Muslim community and an obligation to humanity as a whole. So until the destiny is reached, there will always be the need for the successor of Imam DEEN Muhammad in our life. Okay. In this moment now, it's Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad. We don't have great, wealth or great institutions, and this was one of the critiques, or a critique, but also too, I think perhaps a question in the mind of some: how would Imam DEEN Muhammad's philosophy, or Muslims might say madhab, extend itself beyond his lifetime, because they don't have these institutions. But the most important institution we have is the institution of our own souls. And our souls will never be satisfied until we reach the destiny and it will continue to requisition leaders. It will continue to requisition the success of Imam W. DEEN Mohammed until the task is complete. So the necessity for Imam Muhammad's teaching in this moment, it can't be overstated. It's a critical moment. This is the period immediately after his passing. And I'm not talking about, in the immediate, couple of years, but if you look at it in the lifespan of a community, we're still in those immediate moments after his passing, in which the spirit of our community, its orientation is being warred upon by forces inside of it and outside of it. So it's necessary that one from among us is raised up by virtue of the demand in the collective soul, raised up by virtue of his own determination, and raised up by virtue of the authorization that was given to him by Imam W. DEEN Mohammed. So, we're going to continue the work until the work is completed. And the work encompasses the establishment of our own community, the establishment of the model community, which will serve as an example to America and the world.
Thank you for that excellent answer to the question that I just presented to you. Much there in what you just shared with us, Imam Ibrahim, and we appreciate it. Imam Waheed, did you have any last questions before we conclude?
No, other than just it's an outstanding program tonight, and I think we got some real good insights. We encourage our listening audience to take the advice of Imam Ibrahim and for us to have a little bit more bravery and not become cowards and listen to what you're hearing. These tapes, these records, everything that Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad is saying, this is captured, it's documented. And we would advise you to do deep study and just go back and take a listen to it, especially if your soul is, requiring you to do so, just be brave and do it. Thank you for the insight tonight, Imam. Looking forward to seeing you in Dallas next month.
Yes, sir.
Hot Texas. See you brothers there.
Yeah, we have an interest in the whole life of the people, the East Coast life, the Midwest life, the Southwest, the West Coast, Pacific Northwest. There isn't any area in which our life finds expression that we don't have an interest in. And that is one of the distinguishing characteristics by which future generations will be able to recognize the next leader.
Viewing audience, go to YouTube to find the address by Imam Earl AbdulMalik Muhammad that was delivered in Detroit, Michigan this past Sunday. Cities of America Come Alive, Islam and the Salvation Road. You can go to YouTube, EAM Speaks, Imam Ibrahim.
Yes, I just wanted to add to that. So during the live stream, there were some issues with the internet connection. So a couple of times it went down. Normally when we're doing these events and live streaming, and we're also recording them simultaneously. So for those of you who watched it and may have missed a portion of it because the internet went out, we're going to stream the actual recording, which doesn't have any interruptions in it. It's a HD quality, high fidelity sound. We're going to restream that this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. I think about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Mhm.
You want to be able to watch it without the kind of blips that you run into when you're kind of relying on the cell towers to provide internet connection. So we'll make that available to everyone on our social media and YouTube platforms.
Thank you for sharing that with us. In conclusion, we would like to deliver a few announcements. Imam Earl AbdulMalik Mohammed, Muslim American leader, has been invited to the city of Dallas, Texas by its citizens to give a major public address on Sunday, June 2nd. His public address, Standing in the Last Days, Islam, Humanity, and an Intelligent Morality. Also, our Imam will be returning for the 4th time to Rochester, New York for the 4th annual Independence Day weekend public address. This will occur on July 6th. July 6th, and the topic is the sacred aim of neighborhood excellence, restoring the lost property of the American people. And also, I would like to put into our mind, in October, on Imam W.D. Muhammad's birthday, Muslim American Leadership Day will be celebrated and recognized. It will take place in Newark, New Jersey. More information to come out regarding this event. I want to say, Imam Ibrahim, this is the 4th one that we have in Newark.
Yes, sir.
One in Philadelphia, and this will be the 3rd in Newark, New Jersey. Muslim American Leadership Day on or around October 30th of Imam W.D. Muhammad's birthday.
Yes, sir.
What we like to do is show our lapel pin. The Muslim American Ministry for Human Salvation is actively and materially involved in support of the determination and dignity of the Palestinian people, as we are with all of the world's oppressed. To this end, Muslim American Ministry for Human Salvation has designed a lapel pin that places the Muslim American flag as designed by our late leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad, alongside the Palestinian flag. The pin is being offered exclusively to the Muslim American community through our distributor, El-Amin PriorityDistributors.com, and Imam Terenzo El-Amin for the cost of $15.95 for shipping and handling per pin. 100% of the proceeds will be forwarded to legitimate ongoing relief efforts. The pin measures approximately 2 inches by 1 inch and is suitable for males and females as an adornment. We have limited supplies and we expect them to sell out quickly. We cannot accommodate bulk orders at this time and can permit only a maximum of 2 pins per order. And we say praise be to Allah that we have sent in a donation from the proceeds to one of the agencies that is helping with the Palestinian people and their determination. And we would like to continue to make that type of donation to their cause. We'd like to close out our 12th episode of Bilalian Voices in the tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad with his prayer, the prayer of purification and purpose. O Allah, we cannot manage this life for ourselves, not without you. Please make our life what you would want it to be, what you prefer it to be. Do not allow us to act on our own. Help us to act only in obedience to you. We hear you, we obey you, and we look to you, our Lord, for forgiveness. And to you is our destination. Amen. Peace.
Assalamu alaikum.
Like my son.
Like my salam.